All right, Fox News alert, and this is obviously just in. President Obama starting perhaps to feel the pressure. In a letter obtained by Fox News Channel, Valerie Jarrett responds to Rick Perry by inviting him, as requested, to a substantive meeting on immigration while he is in Texas. Ed Henry on the phone obtained that letter. Ed, what is the latest, and what do you think was the change from why doesn't the governor meet me at the airport to why don't we meet?
Well, good morning, Brian. I think this has been fast-moving, and it started on Fox and Friends last week. I think it was last Wednesday when you interviewed Governor Perry, and he invited the president to come down to the border and see the crisis for himself. And we've been pressing Josh Earnest and other White House officials as to why the president's not going himself. As you say, they're stopping short of sending the president to the border, but I think they are caving somewhat to political pressure. What changed? It's not just Republicans like Rick Perry pressing the president. You had this Democrat, Henry Cuellar, telling our own Neil Cavuto yesterday that the president hasn't done enough, should have seen this coming, and that as a Texas Democrat, Henry Cuellar says the president should go to the border. So what I think the White House is trying to do here politically is find some middle ground. They don't want to cave completely to Governor Perry and others and have the president go to the border and get in the middle of a photo op, frankly, that could blow up in his face because it's a crisis down there on the border, as we've been showing, and that's going to potentially look bad for the president to get caught up in the middle of that crisis. So instead, the White House is trying to put it on their turf and say, let's have a roundtable meeting, the president, Governor Perry, faith leaders, and others, to try to discuss the problem. I suspect there'll be some Republicans who say, we've been talking about this problem for a long time. How about you secure the border? How about you take some action? So there'll be more pressure on him. But I think the White House is trying to show some good faith here to say, let's meet in the middle.
Yeah, something that in that letter that you got from Valerie Jarrett, it does refer to what's going on the southern border as a humanitarian situation 3 or 4 times. And that's new. Suddenly there is some urgency to that. But then at the end it goes, the humanitarian situation at the border is but the latest example of the great cost of congressional inaction. So forget about we were supposed to secure the border years ago. It's all Congress's fault.
Sure. Well, 2 things there. One, you're right, and it's very important to point that out. Right, that is a shift from the White House because it was the White House itself, the president, and others who had suggested this was humanitarian crisis. To now call it a situation shows they're trying to turn the temperature down, perhaps trying to, suggest that this is not as bad a situation as even the White House suggested a few days ago. So that's interesting. I do think the White House makes a fair point, though, that long term, the Republicans can continue to beat up on the president about this short-term crisis, but long-term Republicans haven't really put a substantive plan on the table to deal with the broken immigration system. But certainly you're right that the president's hand in that fight over broader immigration reform has been weakened by the fact that you have this crisis in the short term. The president claims that the border is secure and we can move on to a path to citizenship and comprehensive reform. That hand is weakened when you have this crisis down at the border. There are a lot of people in both parties, including Henry Cuellar, as I mentioned, a Democrat, saying, let's fix this, and then we can move on to broader immigration reform. But you can't do that if you've got a crisis on your hands right now.
And does some political chess need to go on? I mean, we saw initially President Obama offered a handshake on, the tarmac at Austin Bergstrom Airport with Governor Perry. Then when Governor Perry asked for this substantive meeting, he said, yes, I'll give it to you, but there are going to be other people there. It's going to be this round table of sorts. Should the governor say yes, or should he say, we need a one-on-one and we need that one-on-one at the border?
Sure. Well, certainly I'm not going to pick sides. I'm not going to advise the governor, but I think you've got a fair question there, which is, if the governor threw out there that the president should go to the border as a Republican critic of his and the president is now trying to meet him halfway, it probably makes sense for the governor to at least sit down with the president. The governor can come out of that meeting, have a news conference, do an interview on Fox or anywhere and say, look, he needs to do more. He needs to go to the border. This meeting's not enough. But I think at the very least, the president's showing some good faith here to try to sit down with the governor. But it was a smart move by the governor to say, let's not just do a handshake photo op. Let's have a real meeting. And it sounds like Valerie Jarrett and others at the White House agree with him.
And do we believe what you got from Josh Earnest yesterday, what the AP is reporting yesterday, what the Washington Post is saying today? Some say he's going to get, most of these kids are going to be deported. Others say he's reevaluating, giving in to his left. Where do you think the administration is on what to do with the 52,000 plus children?
Frankly, I think as you just laid it out, it's still confusing as to what their next move is. But I think the shortest way to say it is that last night, as you say, the Associated Press suggested that under pressure from liberals, the president's going to back down on his promise to deport most of these kids if they turn out to be illegal, and that he's not going to, seek extra powers to move this process along and deport them quicker. White House officials last night insisted to me that story was wrong and that the president still wants to move towards deportation. But look what the Homeland Security Secretary, Jay Johnson, did on NBC's Meet the Press a couple of days ago. He didn't sound like somebody who was ready to deport all of the illegals coming in. Instead, he said, well, let's look at other options. And so I think the White House has sent some conflicting signals.
All right. Ed Henry, who's getting a little OT today, starting early. Ed, thanks very much.
Thank
Good
you.
morning. Thanks.
All right. 25 minutes before the top of the hour.